Last time we discovered we had low compression, and a leak down test showed that air was going right past her valves. So today, Josie's going to lose her head.
The first thing we need to do is remove this head. Now, since this is a flathead engine, the head doesn't contain any moving parts. All the valves are in the engine block next to the cylinders. So all we need to do is remove the head and a couple covers on the side of the block, and we can get to the valve assemblies, as well as the tops of the pistons. Then we'll have a much better idea of what we're dealing with. Let's hold it here for a second. You may be asking, what in the world? Well, one of the tricks to popping a stubborn head off an engine is to stuff some soft rope into one of the cylinders and then crank it over, letting the piston push against the rope and forcing the head upwards. I found this old broken bungee cord and figured it was perfect for the task.
Well, there's quite a bit of carbon buildup on the tops of the pistons, and these exhaust valves definitely look like they've seen better days. Maybe a bit of rust around some of these here, and definitely not going to seal right. Okay, so there's two possible reasons for our compression problems. First is the rings around the pistons, which are there to keep the oil from getting into the combustion chamber, could be leaking past, not sealing properly, and that could be letting the compression leak out. The other more common reason is going to be the valves. The valves are supposed to open and close with intake or exhaust depending on the stroke, and they're supposed to seal tightly. And I can look at these right now and I can see there's a lot of corrosion around them, and I think they just need to be cleaned up. But we're going to do what's called lapping, which is basically putting some liquid sandpaper around the valves and spinning them with a tool which will grind both the valve and the seat, and that'll allow it to come together with a nice seal. First step though is getting the valves out, and that can be a little tricky. We need to push down on the valve guides, which will then allow us to pull out the retaining clips that are here, which then will allow the entire spring and valve guide to come out through the top. The problem is that about half of these valve guides are stuck in the block. So I've been soaking them over the last several days with a combination, well, alternating between some penetrating oil and some brake cleaner to eat away all the gunk in there. And I've managed to get one more undone. So I have 5 of the 8 I think I can get out. The other 3, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with yet, but we'll figure that out. Now, they make a special tool to push down on the valve guides and get these retaining clips out. But as you probably guessed, I don't have one. I can modify a flathead screwdriver for it. So far, I've found that I've actually been able to get in and push down on the valve seats just fine with a normal one. But if I need to modify it, I can. So let's start with this one here. This first one is a little bit stuck, and by that I mean I can actually get the retaining clip out easily enough, but the valve guide is actually stuck. I managed to get it pushed down, but it won't come up. So I want to work on that a bit more before I take that one out. So we're going to start with this intake valve right here on the number 1 cylinder.
Well, we ran into a bit of bad luck taking the head off. Let's see if you can spot it. Yep, right there. A missed swing from a hammer while trying to loosen the head broke part of the stud surround. It didn't cause any damage to the internal workings of the head, but it may mean that we can't torque this side down very well, which could lead to some leaks. So to be on the safe side, I procured another head, which went straight into the electrolysis tank, and then into the oven to dry, and lastly, it got a fresh couple of coats of primer.
Okay, I have 6 of the 8 valves completely loose and ready to pull out. There's 2 more that will not come out. Their valve guides are completely stuck in the block. And due to the design of these particular valves, which I'll show you a little bit closer in just a moment here, I can't just pull them out without the valve guides. I'm actually going to have to cut the valves to get them out. Now, that's going to be annoying, but it's not the end of the world. I've already got 2 more valves to replace them, and we can buy new valve guides to replace the ones that I'm going to have to destroy to get out. But it is a little extra work. Let me show you exactly what the valves look like and why I can't just pull them straight out of the valve guides. Okay, so here we have a valve that came out of the engine properly. This is an exhaust valve, just like the 2 that are stuck. Valve stem goes all the way down the middle. At the bottom, we've got a spring retaining clip, which keeps this spring in tension between the bottom of the valve and the valve guide here, which is this piece here. As you can see, if you look closely, there's a line down the middle here. This is actually the older style split valve guide, so they're actually 2 pieces. Now the problem is that the valve guide on those other 2 are stuck in the block, and I can't get them to budge. And if we take a look at another valve here, you can see what the problem is. And as you can see at the bottom of the stem, it tapers outward, which is where the spring retaining clip would rest against so that it doesn't slide off. The newer style don't have this flaring, this mushroom bottom. They actually go straight and actually have a notch where the spring retaining clip would fit into. And in that case, with the newer ones, you could take the retaining clip off, and then the spring wouldn't be holding it in, and you could just slide it up through the valve guide here. But because it flares out, that's not a possibility here. So what we're going to have to do on those others, like I mentioned, is we're actually going to have to cut the valve, so that way we can slide it out of the valve guide, and then once it's out, we'll be able to drive the valve guide out from the top using a wooden dowel and a hammer or something along those lines. We're going to destroy the valve guides on the other ones there. We've actually already destroyed one of them, so I'm going to have to get new ones here. So for the ones that did come out, how do we deal with those? Well, we need to compress this spring down so that it takes the tension off the retaining clip, and then we can pull that off, and then we can get the spring off the bottom. And as I mentioned, these are split valve guides, so they'll just come apart. So the hard part is compressing that spring. It's a pretty tight spring, very stiff, and they make a tool for compressing that. And for the first time ever, I actually have that tool. Actually, I bought it specifically for this because I've tried a bunch of different ways to get the spring to compress and get the retaining clip off without using it, and it's near impossible. Much easier with this, so I'm going to reposition the camera here and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so the way this is going to work is we're going to, at the bottom of this, is going to slip around the spring there. The top is going to touch the top of the valve, and then we're going to squeeze them together, which is going to pull this spring up, freeing this up here. So give me a moment while I get this on, and I'll show you what that looks like. So once we've got everything connected up and lined up, we're going to go ahead and get this pushed in here, and we actually just squeeze down on this. A little hard to do with the camera in the way here, so we're going to try and push this way. And as you can see, it loosens up the spring. Might have to loosen that up a little bit more. We do that just by screwing this down a little bit more, and then we can press that in. There you go. As you can see, I can pull the spring clip right off, and then we slowly undo, and now we've got everything apart. So here's what the split valve guides look like. They just go together like that around our valve, spring clip, and in the tool is our spring. So now that we've done that, we're actually going to put this back in the block, slide this, or put this back on, slide this in without the spring on there, and that will allow us to put the lapping compound on the bottom and lap these in to make a nice, good seal. Okay, so the process is we're going to put the valve and in its valve guide back in. No spring, that way we can freely move it up and down. We'll really just need the guide in there to keep it centered, so that way everything stays nice and level. And I begin to see why they went away from using the split valve guides. They are a pain to get in evenly. Okay, so the next step is we're going to use some valve grinding compound. We're going to put that on the underside of the valve all the way around and seat it down in there, let it sit. And we have a special tool with a suction cup on the end. I'm going to push it down, and while we're pushing down, we're going to be able to rotate this around, which is then going to allow us to grind in so that these two have the exact same profile. Yes, I'm using an old sock. You're going to find that old socks make great rags. Now they're not lint-free, so they're not amazing rags, but they're cheap, like me. Now there's a couple ways that you can test to see if you were successful here. One is to put some Prussian blue around, pull it down, give it a little twist. It'll let you know if everything's there. The other way is a little easier. If you just pull down on the valve, you can use a liquid of some sort and see if it's holding in here or not. I'm just using brake cleaner. And it does look like it is staying there. Now, I don't have a very good way to do this edge over here. Not sure if you can see very well in there, but the liquid is staying. This tells me we've got a way better seal than we had before. There we go. One exhaust valve done. Ready to go back in. Just 7 more valves to go. Okay, before we get cutting here, let me explain what we've got going here. And yes, that is tin foil. I need something that would be moldable in there to cover up the holes so we didn't get any bits of metal down into the block. And well, if you need moldable, and as a benefit, fireproof, tin foil is your guy. So I've got my valve spring compressor pulling the valve up, exposing the shaft of the valve. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I've got a variety of ways that I'm going to try that. First is just with a good old-fashioned hand hacksaw, mainly because I can't get my Dremel in there. If that doesn't work or takes too long, we'll have to figure something else out. But we're just going to experiment here, see what we got. One cut valve. Okay, so why did we go through all that? Well, as you can see now that we've got the valve out, you can see down in there this valve guide is just all beat up, but most importantly it's stuck. So now that we've got the valve out, we can actually come down from the top and drive straight down on it to try and push it out. And obviously it's destroyed, we'll have to get a new one, but that's not that big of a deal. We actually have to cut this one here for the same reason. If you take a look, I don't know if you can see that very well, at the valve seat here, it is in terrible shape.
All right, so as we can see, this valve seat is in absolutely terrible shape. It is definitely not supposed to look like that. This one over here is in not so great shape either. You can see some chunks out on that side there. This side is pretty smooth. This one, no, it's just absolutely terrible.
Well, after much beating and persuasion, I can see the light. So we managed to get it out. This is not what they meant when they said split valve guides. This is not only split in two like it's supposed to be, but it broke in fourths. But hey, it's out. Now we have to do this one. Well, we had pretty good luck with our 1/2-inch drive extension and a ball peen hammer, so we'll try it over here too. There we go, all the way through.
All right, so what's the proper way to handle this? That valve seat is obviously in terrible shape. There's two major ways to go about that. We could just grind it down and hope that we have enough valve seat there left to make a nice surface for the valve to seal on. The correct way to do it is probably to take that valve seat out entirely and put a brand new one in. Now, I'm not really equipped to do that at the moment, but I am equipped to grind that valve seat, and I figure we don't really have anything to lose by doing that. We might as well see what we can do. It's not necessarily the correct way to do it, but it's the way we're going to do it.
Well, as you can see, it is a lot better. It's not perfect, I still have a little more to do, but that is night and day difference. So we're going to give this a shot. We're going to continue cleaning it up. We're going to see if it seals. We got to still do the second one over here and just see what happens. I'll probably show you the results of all that in the next one. This video's run kind of long. So I just wanted to give you a little view here of after doing a bit of a grind. It's actually working pretty well. Fingers crossed.